Psychology says one of the most painful human experiences is not rejection, it is being chosen only after someone else was picked first. If you were never the favorite, never the priority, never the first call, then your mind may have learned something about people that others never had to learn. And what if the deepest damage was never the moment you were ignored, but the way being second slowly rewired how you see trust, love, and loyalty? Psychology suggests that repeated emotional overlooking does not just hurt feelings, it changes behavior. When being second happens again and again, the brain stops reading relationships in a relaxed way. It starts preparing for disappointment before anyone says a word. The first pattern is hyper-awareness of social signals. People who were never anyone's first choice often become extremely good at reading tone, pauses, changes in energy, and silent distance. This is not always insecurity. It is often rejection sensitivity built by repetition. Their brain learned that being ignored usually does not arrive loudly. It arrives quietly. That is why they often sense distance long before anyone admits it. Psychology would call this adaptation, but emotionally it feels like never being able to relax around affection. Even in peace, they keep scanning for signs that they are about to be quietly replaced again. The second pattern is strong independence. When emotional support is inconsistent, the mind adapts by becoming self-reliant earlier than it should. These people learn to handle pain alone, solve problems alone, and celebrate quietly. They don't always hate help, they just don't trust help to stay. So independence becomes less of a preference and more of a survival language. And over time, people praise that strength without realizing how lonely its roots really are. The third pattern is overgiving in relationships. Attachment psychology explains this clearly. When someone grows up feeling replaceable, they often try to become irreplaceable. So they give more time, more understanding, more patience, and more emotional labor than they receive. This is not weakness, it is a strategy shaped by fear. If I give enough, maybe I will finally be kept. And that's how love starts feeling conditional. The fourth pattern is a deep fear of being temporary. Repeated emotional neglect can create a subtle belief, I can be replaced at any time. So they may downplay their needs, avoid conflict, and accept less than they deserve just to stay included. They don't always fear loneliness, they fear being quietly swapped. The fifth pattern is emotional strength that other people don't notice. People who face repeated exclusion often build enormous emotional endurance. They can survive disappointment without collapsing. They can stay calm when plans fall apart. And when people leave, they often don't panic, not because it doesn't hurt, but because they've seen it before. Their strength is silent, not loud. The sixth pattern is valuing loyalty more than affection. When affection feels unstable, the brain starts prioritizing consistency over intensity. That is why these people often don't chase excitement, they chase safety, honesty, and effort. Being chosen once means less to them than being chosen every day. So what looks like insecurity is often adaptation. What looks like distance is often memory. What looks like too much loyalty is often old pain trying to prevent new loss. And this is where psychology becomes uncomfortable. These patterns may not be personality at all. They may be the nervous system trying to survive an old social wound. In other words, being never chosen first may not have shown you who you are. It may have trained you into who you had to become. That difference matters, because once you see the pattern, you stop blaming your personality for adaptations that were born in pain. That's the first moment healing can actually begin. Because the real tragedy was never just being second, it was learning to believe second was all you deserved. And the real work is not making others choose you first, it's finally learning to do that for yourself. That means boundaries, That means reciprocity. That means no longer mistaking self-erasure for love. And that's where the story gets complicated, because the same pain that made them deeply loyal can also make them dangerously tolerant of being underloved. So here's the twist most people don't want to hear. People who were never anyone's first choice often become some of the most loyal people you will ever meet. But if they don't heal, that loyalty can trap them in relationships that keep proving the original wound right. And that's why this topic is so dangerous and so important. The wound doesn't just hurt, it can quietly shape the standards you live by. So if this felt painfully accurate, you're not imagining it, and you're not the only one carrying it. If you want psychology that explains your patterns more honestly than social media ever will, like, subscribe, and share this with someone who has spent too long feeling easy to replace. Because once you understand the pattern, you stop confusing your survival habits with your identity. And once that happens, loyalty stops meaning self-sacrifice and starts meaning mutual choice. Healing doesn't erase sensitivity, it teaches the nervous system that not every pause means abandonment. And perhaps the healthiest version of this story is not becoming less independent, but finally letting closeness exist beside strength. The goal is not to become someone's favorite, the goal is to stop accepting roles that require you to stay emotionally hungry. That's where self-respect begins. And that's where old pain either turns into wisdom or keeps repeating itself in new faces. Maybe the real first choice they were always waiting for was never another person. Maybe it was the moment they finally chose themselves before choosing anyone who only wanted them second. And that's the controversial truth. Being never chosen first can create deep damage, but it can also create a terrifyingly accurate filter for who is actually safe. So was the pain only a wound, or did it also teach them to read people better than the people who never had to earn safety the hard way? That's the question that makes this psychology uncomfortable. Because sometimes the people who were overlooked become the ones who understand loyalty most deeply. And sometimes that wisdom comes at a cost most people around them never even notice. So if this recognized yourself, don't just ask why you were never first. Ask what your mind had to become in order to survive being second. Because that answer will explain far more about your relationships than rejection ever could. And once you understand that answer, the way you choose people may change forever. If this gave language to something you've carried silently for years, stay close to this channel, because the next psychology video may explain another part of you that no one ever saw clearly.